Welcome back to Frontier Fundamentals, Episode 2. In the last episode, we learned how to, you learned how to pilot, I knew already, and to use the autopilot and to land and to use the engines and stuff. And if you haven't seen that, why are you starting with Episode 2? First thing I want to do here is cover the options menu. You get to that by pressing the pause button twice or pressing escape twice. And you get a bunch of options which are mostly self-explanatory. I'm going to set the details very high because, I like to turn space dust off because I think it just gets in the way, but that's a personal choice. Elite control method is it controls a lot more like the original game, where the left and right controls rotate the ship. I don't know the role of the ship, rather than sort of turning you left and right, which I find a lot harder to control, but you can switch it to that if you like. I'm also going to turn off the music so that I'm not talking over it when we come out of hyperspace. Also, the saving and loading buttons are down here, so the arrow coming off the disc is loading, the arrow going into the disc is saving, and that's number 9 there is delete and exit. Goes back to the title screen. I recommend saving to making a second floppy disk or floppy disk image if you're using an emulator to save to, and of course to save often because it's an old game and you can die very easily, and sometimes you can get stuck in situations you can't get out of. Let's say you saved moments before a missile was about to hit your ship. If that was your only save, you would totally ruin everything, so I advise using staggered file names like 1, 2, 3, etc. So, in this episode, we're going to cover trading and hyperspace. So, let's go to the communications panel and look at the station services. We've already covered launch, which in the last episode. The shipyard is where you buy parts for your ship, you buy new ships, and for some reason also contact with the local police. I guess they like being around all the big guns. There's also the bulletin board, which is things. We're going to cover that in a later episode, but anyway. And the stock market, which is what we're going to cover now. And here we see the various trade goods being sold and bought at this starport and any starport. Buttons for buying and selling, the item itself, the price per ton, and the number of tons in stock at the spaceport, and also how much of it is in the cargo hold of your ship. The prices are different in different systems, basically based on supply and demand. They fluctuate slightly within a system, but generally they stay the same. And if you're into Ferengi philosophy, this is where the great material continuum comes in. Some systems have too much of one thing and not enough of another, and the great continuum flows through them all like a mighty river. So if you want to make money, you have to go with the current. And so if you want to find who has what and who wants what, you can go to the star map, which is button 2 here, which you click on this, or you go to, or you click button 2, F2, sorry. And here we have the star map, centered on Ross 154, the system that we're in. And you see down here we have a little summary of the system, a Type M red star with an outdoor ice and water world, tourism and fishing. Anyway, if you want to get a more detailed look at the system, click on button 6 here or press F6. And it shows you a layout, diagrammatical layout of the system. And you can click on these various stellar bodies to see what they are and their details and things. Dust Ball, Asta, that's the big gas giant with the rings, even though they're not shown here, this is just a diagram. And here is Merlin, a world with indigenous life and oxygen atmosphere. And the most relevant factor here is the presence of a starport Sirocco station. As you can see on other celestial bodies, there are no starports, so this is the only place you can get to refuel and resupply and sell stuff and do all the community things that humans like to do with each other. So Merlin is a world like about the size of Mercury, which is much like Europa, the moon of Jupiter, which has an icy surface, but because of tidal forces from the gas giant, in this case Asta, but in the case of Europa, Jupiter, under the ice it's warm enough for there to be liquid water, and so there's a lot of fish under there, and that's one of the major exports of this system. And if you want to have a look at the specifics of the imports and exports, the haves and wants, you click on button 7 here, or press F7. So basically the imports are the things that the system doesn't have a lot of and therefore has a relatively high price compared to other systems, and the exports are things that are relatively low price because there's a lot of it. In this case, animal meat and animal skins and so on, and water and liquid oxygen, because this is an oxygen-rich, water-rich, fish-rich planet, and the animal meat basically consists entirely of fish farmed from under the ice. Now, button 8 here shows you the demographics of the system, the government type and all this. There are a couple of different major governments, the Federation and the Empire, as well as many independent worlds. Federation systems tend to be fairly safe, but not entirely. You'll find the most pirates in places that have a weak government with only patrol by the local barons or corporations, or an anarchy entirely, with no government whatsoever. And still, after all these years, I have no idea what system number means. Yeah. Also, looking back here, there are of course illegal goods which you can get into trouble with the law for handling in this system, and usually they fetch a high price on the black market, but we'll get into that on another episode. So, if you click 6 again here, or F6, go back to the star map, and you can control this view by moving the arrow keys. So if I just move up here to Barnard's star, we can see it's 5.42 light years away, and it's a very industrial system. So let's click button 6 and look at the specifics. So we can see a number of planets here. The two inner planets are rocky worlds with a thin or no atmosphere whatsoever, but nevertheless they are inhabited, and they have some orbital stations and trading posts around them. So let's have a look at the imports and exports. And as you can see, one of the major imports is animal meat. So we can buy fish, animal meat, from Ross 154 at Merlin and sell it in the Barnard Star system for a profit. There's some other relevant imports such as water and liquid oxygen, but they're so cheap that the markup is not very, that the difference in price is not very significant. So unless you've got massive amounts of cargo space and not much money, it doesn't really work out to be worth it. So let's go back to the stock market and buy some animal meat. However, as you can see, it's 94.5 credits and we can only afford 1 ton, leaving us 5 credits remaining. However, we have a way to make more cash. Let's go to the shipyard. And you see a number of options here. The one we want is upgrades. And I have neglected to mention up to this point the incredible hats of the people in the 33rd century. Funny thing about games like this that I have played so often is that none of it looks weird to me, but seeing this for the first time with new eyes, if that's possible, that's a very odd hat, and I want one. Anyway, there's a few items that come as standard which we can sell to make some extra money for our trading purposes. See, where we're going, we don't need roads. I mean, we don't need weapons, because Barnard's Star is one of the safe systems. There are no pirates there, ever. Trust me. So, what comes as standard is 2 homing missiles, so we go here to remove, and we get a bit of money for each of those, but more importantly, we make some cargo space, which can be indicated here. 4 remaining, 2 used. And also, let's get rid of our 1 megawatt pulse laser, and that gets us to 50,000 credits or so. And now we have 5 tons of cargo space remaining. So let's go back to the stock market and stock up on as much animal meat as we can fit in our hold. Now you may notice that it says 6 tons here and we're usually using 7. That's because we have 1 ton of hydrogen fuel in our cargo hold. And you need this in order to go to hyperspace. Let's take a look at the ship's data screen under button 3 here, or F3. And you can see a nice 3D spinning display of our Eagle long-range fighter here, along with some stats. This is all fairly self-explanatory. I'm going to come to more detailed explanations later. Click on it again and you get to see information about yourself, including your rank in various governments, elite rating, which I'll come to, legal status, criminal record, medical permits, and so on. Click it again and you get to the cargo whatever. I can never figure out which one it is. Anyway, and you can see that you have 6 tons of animal meat and 1 ton of hydrogen fuel. And there's a refuel button here, which I'll come to later. Anyway, I'm sure look, you're eager to get underway, so let's request permission to launch. And launch. Should be familiar with this by now. Raise your undercarriage, turn the labels on, go into reverse view, face down, increase speed with return. Now when we're about 10,000 meters, we'll be high up enough to do a hyperspace jump, which will be indicated by the appearance here, there we go, of this little icon with an arrow going into a little wispy galaxy type thing. Click this or press F8 to go into hyperspace. Before I do that, I'm going to go into front view, and then into hyperspace we go. And we've emerged in the outskirts of the Barnard star system. If you look behind us, you can see a hyperspace cloud. This is a remnant left behind, which can be a warning to a signal to pirates that a ship has just come out of hyperspace nearby. Now you may have noticed that it's already the 6th of January. It takes about a week for your ship to go through a full, to travel its full maximum distance in hyperspace, which in this case is 8 light years. So travelling about 5 point whatever it was takes a fraction of that. Now since we're out in the middle of nowhere, we need to have some way to navigate. And the way we do this is we click the star map button here, and you'll notice it changes to a little orbit button icon here, and you click that again and you get a view of the system itself. And you can go over here to buttons 7 and 8 to zoom in and out and hold it in, and you can see these 2 inner worlds, Cook and Birmingham world, which if you remember were the inhabited planets in this system. Click on one of them to center and then zoom in again. You can double click on the zoom icon to go to maximum zoom, and here we can see the rocky planet of Birmingham world. Now I'm going to zoom out a bit more, and if you hold in the right mouse button over here and move the mouse, you can rotate the view. And let's click on Boston Base, the orbiting starport, and zoom in again, double click, and we can see Boston Base. Now button 10 here is what allows us to target our autopilot from a distance, so click that and then click on Boston Base. Now we can go back to front view and set our autopilot on, and you can see the distance indicated is 10.875 AU, and AU is an astronomical unit. The 1 AU is the distance from Earth to the Sun, so that's quite a distance. And obviously we're going to be needing to use the Star Dreamer to increase time to get there. And you can see even with the increased time, it's still a bit of a delay to get there. Normally music would occur after hyperspace, which is this game has a brilliant soundtrack, and I recommend you leave it on, but I turned it off just so I wouldn't be talking over the music. Anyway, we're nearing Birmingham World, and we'll be brought out of Star Dreamer outside the station, and there we're undergoing the automatic docking sequence. Now you can watch this sequence or you can accelerate time. I usually click level 3 to get us in fairly quick. There we go. And we're inside Boston Base. And now we can go to the stock market and sell our animal meat. Note the price, much greater, for a profit of about 500 credits. And note again the very strange hats and blank stares of these very odd people in the future. So how does it feel to make your first bit of cash? There are greater profits to be earned than can be gained by selling fish, however. Now there are 2 systems I know of that are perfectly safe and you'll never be attacked in, barring unusual circumstances, but anyway. Go into the star map and you can see Barnard Star and Sol, the planet, the system which presumably all of you are now located in. Now while I'm here I'll describe this screen in more detail. You can hold in the right mouse button and move around to get a 3-dimensional view, because space is 3-dimensional, and you can see that these lines coming out of these systems sort of stick out from a flat plane, which is roughly the plane of the galaxy. Now I don't usually look at it in any view other than the front view, and if you want to get it back to normal, just press C to center it up back onto Barnard Star. There's a few little useful things under this tool icon, this spanner here. Click that, and you get a number of things here. You can click that to turn off the. Oops. Oh, of course, you can zoom in and out like this, and you can see some more of the system names that way. As you can see, there's a great deal of systems to be travelled to, but for now we'll just stay local for local people. Yes. Now click that again, and you can turn off the grid. You can also turn on the trade route icons, lines even, and these show. You can see these purple lines here, which between different systems, which show basically that there is a way to make profit by travelling along these lines. There are many more ways to make profit than are indicated here, but this is useful for getting you started. The other one here is to turn off this background text, which will say core systems or imperial systems and so on. I tend to leave the grid on and the trade routes on as well. Now let's take a look at our home, Sol. The historic system famous as the place where all this shit started. And you can see just at a glance there are a great number of different starports here. There's of course Earth with a bunch of different cities, including New San Francisco. I guess something happened to the old one. And even Mars has been terraformed, which has a couple of starports there. And Earth even has 3 orbital cities. There's even people living on the moon. And the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. I feel sorry for the people living in fucking Mercury. You need 33rd century sunblock to help you deal with living in this place. Anyway, let's go to the imports and exports and have a look. Now usually the profit to be made on an item depends much on its base price, and computers are very expensive, even in the 33rd century. Although I wonder how much of that is museum pieces. Maybe there's a ZX81 in there somewhere. Anyway, because Barnard's Star, which we'll have a look at, is an industrial system, one of their major exports is computers. Our computers. Yes. Anyway, so let's go to stock market and stock up on computers. We'll also need to buy 1 ton of hydrogen fuel for the journey in order to make the hyperspace jump. So let's do that. And buy 4 tons of computers. That's a lot of. That's enough for a really big LAN party. One of the other imports you might want to try is robots, but they're more expensive, and we can barely afford as many computers as we have as it is. Sadly, robot liberation, along with animal liberation, are dreams unyet fulfilled in the future. And indeed, even people lubrication, liberation. You can even buy slaves on the black market, and indeed legally in some systems, including especially the Empire. But anyway, getting ahead of myself again. So let's set a course back to Sol, which is also what you, and launch from the space station. This is even simpler than from a starport. You just click the button, and it will automatically eject you from the starbase. Now when you're way out here you might see an orange hyperspace cloud right in front of you, but don't worry, it's not an explosion, you're not going to crash into it. It's insubstantial. It's basically the other end of that blue hyperspace cloud you saw coming out of hyperspace. Now once you're far enough away from the station, you can go into hyperspace again. Don't forget to lower your undercarriage and turn on the annotations. Yeah, look, I can see Uranus. I had to do that joke sooner or later. Now let's go into the system map by clicking there twice, and let's find one of those starports, such as Abraham Lincoln, which is in orbit of Earth. Here you can see a nice level of detail on the planet here. There's Australia, and America, and Africa, and yes, anyway, it's not a geography lesson. Zoom out a bit, and you can see that there are 3 orbital cities around Earth. Let's click Abraham Lincoln, and target the autopilot on it. You can do it from a distance, you don't have to zoom in. And let's go back into front view and engage the autopilot again. Usually you emerge about 10 AU out from the system. I guess that's because the hyperspace engines aren't entirely accurate, and they, rather than stick you somewhere in the middle of the system where you might end up inside the sun, which would be very bad, it dumps you somewhere 10 AU approximately out from the system. Some strange adjustments by the and you can see the moon as we're zooming in, and you can see the size of this orbital city here. Anyway, let's not gawk. Zoom, go up to level 3 speed, and we're inside Abraham Lincoln. I bet that's a sentence you never thought you'd hear. And now we can go to the stock market, scroll down, and sell our computers for more profit. Now there is a way to make more money than that by looking on the bulletin boards, but I don't want to put too much out there at once, so we'll cover that in a later lesson. Anyway, there's much money to be made by trading between Barnard Star and Sol. I'll leave it to you to decide what to buy here, but if you look at the imports and exports, you'll definitely see some opportunity for profit. And if you really want to go geeky on me, then, or on anyone in particular, you can have a look at the you can make notes of what the prices are in each system and compare them for maximizing potential profit. But that's a bit of overkill in my opinion. The imports and exports should be sufficient to make a decent profit. But if you do want to keep going, you should keep an eye on this gauge here. So this green line that's filling up this sort of diagonal meter here, that's gone down a bit since we started. Now that is the hydrogen fuel being used by your interplanetary drive, which is basically the physical thrusting, so to speak, of your ship to get you from in the outskirts of the system in towards to the planets. Now this needs to be regularly refueled, or you'll run out of fuel in the middle of space, and you'll essentially become a ballistic, useless chunk of metal which will probably fly straight into the sun, which will result in instant explosive, horrible death and loss of profit. So, just for the sake of it, let's refuel on hydrogen fuel. Buy 1 ton of it, go into the cargo hold here, and click refuel. Now you'll see that the cargo, it's disappeared, the internal fuel tank is full, and you can see the gauge here has gone to the top. Just keep an eye on it and save often in case you end up stuck in the middle of interstellar space with no way to move. It should only be necessary every few trips, but you know. Now, in the next lesson, I'm going to cover the bulletin board and the many opportunities for profit and misadventure and adventure that lie therein. And in the episode after that, we'll be getting into what you've all been waiting for: combat. So this has been Frontier Fundamentals. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you out there.